Our forum today looks forward to this month's opening of the new Margaret M. Walter Wing of the Columbus Museum of Art, with support from Puffin Foundation West, represented here by Java Kittrick and her guests, and The Ohio State University with Stephen Myers and his guests. Please help me thank our sponsors. It's been more than 40 years since a major capital investment has been made at the Columbus Museum of Art. A dream of expanded space happily coincided with what the museum is becoming known for, a fresh imagining of what a museum can be for its guests. You may remember Cindy Myers-Foley of the museum talking at a past forum about the shift to create spaces for learners rather than knowers. That's the kind of forward thinking that's happening at the museum. This new wing is immersive and interactive, while at the same time a reflection of and an integral part of a vibrant and thriving community. The new space brings together building and community, art and mission. The fabrics of both will be intertwined in a fabulous dance of art, space, and people. We won't be able to experience this for ourselves until the opening later this month, but we're lucky today to hear details from behind the scenes from those who crafted it. Please welcome Executive Director of the Columbus Museum of Art, Nannette Macijunes, architect and principal at DesignGroup, Michael Bongiorno, and avid art supporter, art fan, and retired journalist, our host, Carol Luper. I'm turning it over to you.
Thanks, Wendy. I was very lucky last week to get a sneak peek. Nannette took me through the museum, and I must say, before we ask questions of these two, it's jaw-dropping. You can see things from outside now that you couldn't, and the inside is, dare I say, breathtaking. Now remember, I am an impartial and fair journalist. Let me start by asking, Nannette, why the expansion? What was the mission to get the museum to where it is now?
Well, I want to thank you all for coming. This is a great turnout for the arts, and I really appreciate you all being here. I think the fact that we had not made a major infrastructure investment in the museum in 40 years. And that's just, think of where the world was 40 years ago. I mean, it's just an entirely different world. And so this was, we've been working really hard with our new creativity mission, with our embrace of our visitors, and becoming visitor-centered. We've been working on all of this. And this was an opportunity for us to have what we've begun to say is having our insides and outsides match. Now, we have a space that really supports that. And we had just outgrown our previous digs. I mean, we didn't have enough exhibition space for great shows that we wanted to bring to Columbus or we wanted to organize to have them at the museum. We didn't have enough space for the collections. We didn't have enough social space. It's just enough storage space. We have all the needs had sort of bubbled up.
50,000 square feet more.
We did.
That was the goal, and
Yep.
That's what you accomplished. And was it a coordinated effort? Did you see the vision that Nannette saw, or were there glitches along the way? You're an artist, an architect.
The vision was coordinated. So all architecture projects start with need. So Nannette described what some of those needs were. But beyond what I'll call the bricks and sticks of the project, which is the physical thing, is the aspiration of the museum. And what Nannette actually and her team did for us was they actually articulated what that vision was. And that's actually really important for any designer, is that an owner has a clearly articulated sense of what they want and they're able to communicate it to us. So I would say from early on, that dialogue happened and was coordinated.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, one of the very earliest moments in this project for me, because I knew zippo about how, I mean, there are actually art museum directors that sort of make it their mission of their career to sort of go from museum to museum that need an expansion. They kind of get, they get skilled in it, they repeat it. I'd never done it before. But one of the greatest moments for us was actually someone that both Mike and I are good friends with, is KB Jones, who is an architecture professor at the University at Ohio State. And when I was talking to her before anything, she said to me, listen to me. She said, you know who gets great buildings? And I said, no. And she said, people who can articulate what they want. People who can, the client who can really talk to their architect and really give the vision of what they need, their needs and the vision, they get the great building. And I think it was a collaboration because I think we were able to do that.
You changed a lot. You changed the entrance, you changed the location of things, and you're going to be able to move walls, and you raised the ceiling. Talk about the things that people will see that will be very different, and the new and the old.
Want to start?
Tackle that one first?
You go first.
So, you know, when we first started looking at the project, and you have to kind of put yourself back in time and remember what the old entrance was. And when I say old entrance, I don't mean the historic 1931 building entrance, I mean the 1974 building entrance. And what your experience was, you parked the car, you know, or you walked, you trudged through some gravel in sort of a tree lawn, you stumbled up some funny looking stairs with sort of pebbles on them, and then you entered, and your payoff after all that was stepping into this lobby that was essentially cave-like. Yeah, it was a cave. So let's not like mince words here.
And if we met Plato in there, it would have been good, but we never met Plato. Plato was never there with the shadows, but I kept hoping, but it was just a dark cave.
And once you got into that cave too, you didn't really know where to go. Someone always had to direct you around. So like that confusion, like for a visitor, that's your first chapter of your story, right? And if that's not right, so we looked at trying to create the complete opposite experience of that, where it was very clear how to approach the building, how to enter it, and processionally, how to gradually kind of ease into it. And then the moment of payoff when you enter the lobby is that there's this kind of uplifting feeling. And so that major change was one of the biggest ones in terms of the entry experience and the visitor experience and the memory they take of just that part of it, beyond just the collections and how you're engaging with them themselves.
And then we really struggled with where that lobby should be located, that atrium lobby should be located. And I remember a day when Mike and I were at, what coffee shop?
It was Cafe Daniela in
It was
Worthington.
Cafe Daniela. We were at some, and I sat down. He had like 10 drawings of all the locations that the lobby could be in relationship to the wing and to the historic building. And it was at that meeting where he finally said, I just don't like it tacked onto the back. I mean, I just don't like that. And he said, what if we just did, and he turned a piece of paper, what if we did this? What if we put it between the wing and the building? That I like. And it was like that coffee that changed the whole direction.
Yep. It became the defining element of how your entry experience works. And it's also the way the whole new edition is organized relative to the original wing.
Yep. And you can walk across bridges.
Correct.
Word is there is a bridge that would support the weight of a car. When you get there, you'll see that bridge. Tell me about limestone, glass, and stones. Those are three things that you've incorporated and giving people outside the ability to see in, as important, people inside the ability to see out. Broad Street.
Yeah, so Nannette and her team are always talking about the mission-driven nature of how the architecture has evolved, and that's where I'd love to be and where I love to work, is understanding a mission and kind of having things grow out of it organically. And so there are two things to kind of address. One is the sort of materials of the building, why they were chosen. So as the design was evolving, it was becoming a very contemporary statement about how a museum functions and how it relates to the collection as well as the visitor experience. So we knew that we wanted to also relate to the immediate context of the building itself, right? So the 1931 building is a Indiana limestone building, and it has some bronze detailing. There are some windows into it, but it's primarily sort of solid feeling. And we studied a number of different materials. And one thought that we had on our team as our team was designing was, well, what if we work with something that is related to the bronze, but maybe it's not exactly bronze? And for that, we actually looked outside of the immediate campus, and we looked at the surrounding settings, and we looked up at the spire of the First Congregation Church next door, and they have this beautiful patinated copper on it. And we thought, bronze is a copper alloy. There's a dialogue there. Let's think about bringing that material onto the project. Let's think about using Indiana limestone, but using it a different way. And finally, the glass is really a strategic thing that relates to sort of a realization of what the mission was relative to connecting with the museum visitor, the future museum visitor, the current museum visitor, the random passerby. The glass became important because strategically that was the connection of the inside of the museum to the outside in a way that the museum's never really been able to achieve before, because we all love the 1931 building, but per its time and by its design, it's very inwardly focused. And the museum's goal was to reach out and to connect to the surrounding context. And so these large walls of glass that we've coined cinematic facades are about creating a relationship between inside the museum and the outside the museum, so that if you're a passerby, you can see activity in the museum, you can see the collection. What is there is on display, as well as being inside the museum as a visitor and realizing that you are connected to this broader continuum of the city around you, as well as being able to look back at the 1931 building.
Nannette, people are going to ask, so I'm going to. $93 million endowment, $10 million seed lead gift. Talk about where the money came from to make this beautiful new museum.
So it was a $93 million campaign that was sort of it was an inclusive campaign that included the capital dollars that we needed to build the three-phased project, because I remind you all who were here in 2005, this has been a 10-year journey, and we actually started by renovating the beautiful actually we started with Baton Hall. Baton Hall, people's like, what is Baton Hall? Baton Hall is that wonderful little Italianate building with that great tiled roof that's right on the property. It's the original home of what is now CCAD. So when they built the 1931 building for us, then the gallery, they built that for the art school. So that's part of our property. So we started with that building. We renovated it for offices. Then we moved to the historic 1931 building, and Bob Loversich led that team and did a fantastic job renovating that building. And then phase 3 was the reconfiguring of the 1970s building and the addition. So over all of that, the $93 million included all the capital dollars for that, included transition dollars, because I'm very proud to tell you we were open the entire time, except for these last 6 weeks. I felt we never closed, we could never reopen, we could never go ta-da. So we closed so we could go ta-da. So just 6 weeks, we were open the whole time, and it was during this time that we really reimagined who we were. This was the period that won us that national award, the national medal from the Institute for Museum and Library Services that we're so proud of. So it included the transition dollars of that, the capital dollars, and some more money for endowment. So we really did a lot with that. $93 million is a lot of money, but we did a lot with it. And we did get a great lead gift from Bob and Peggy Walter. Peggy is with us. People say, how do you know Peggy Walter? I said, we've always known Peggy Walter. Say that we've known Peggy since she was a very young mother. I mean, she was on women's board at docent. It talks to this entire campaign talks to relationships. It talks to the relationships of long-term members and donors and people committed to Columbus. And I think the vast majority of the money came from private individuals, families, individuals loving the museum. But I can say that we could not have done this without the incredible support of our county, our city, and our state. So it was across the board. We were just really lucky. But it's been a big campaign.
There are 3 things that blew me away. The Lino Tagliapietro that hangs from the ceiling, the barrel, and the Frank Stella that I think you can see from outside. We can see the Frank Stella from outside. And those are the 3 things that blew me away. What 3 things do you think will capture people right off the bat? I know the gift store has doubled in size, and we can talk about all those statistics, and I'll be shopping, and there. And
shopping is good.
Yeah, shopping is good. And there is a wonderful new cafe. And I don't want to tell them about it. You tell them.
So, Mike, as an architect, what are the 3 things that we want them all to come in and see? What are the 3 things you don't want them to miss as the architect?
Well, so one of them's kind of tough because it.
We may not, part of the building we may not let you go in.
Well, no, it's not just that.
see
It's
that
just
one.
that it requires time. And so when I was I was living in Rome for a while, and one of my favorite buildings there is the Pantheon. And whenever I had a chance, I would run over to see what the light was doing coming through the oculus, and where it was cast. What color was it? If it was raining through it. And I had the luxury at that time to be able to do that. So the reason I say this one's a tough one is because our team studied how the light comes into the building, like ad nauseum, like in terms of when it was coming in, what color we think it would be, what time of the year. And so there's like this emotional response that I'm hoping people will have at different times of the year to how light comes in the building. Whether it's ambient light, because we don't have a heck of a lot of sun here, but on sunny days, it is quite magnificent when you think about the shadows and how the shadows play with all the materials.
And the really good thing about that is it would require you to come to the museum many times.
Many times. So that's what I was working on.
Many times.
But we also studied it relative to protecting the work, and then most of the penetration of the light is in the main public spaces and not the gallery spaces as well. There are a lot of sort of secrets that we kind of wove into it. We kind of choreographed the building like you would think about like a cinematographer's storyboarding things. And so there are a lot of what we'll call framed views of different parts of the city, from whether they be slots in the wall lining up with key icons around the city, or being able to look back at the 1931 building frieze and really appreciating that relief. And so, I encourage people to look for those little surprises and maybe try to think about what we were thinking about when we did them. And the third is really, for me, having been through the galleries now that art is hanging in them, seeing the pieces that I've loved in the collection displayed at the kind of scale of quiet that they have never been able to, the large contemporary pieces, because they were arranged salon style in a lot of the galleries. Being able to see those pieces in their, I feel like, proper setting is really great.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think one of the big surprises for people will be, well, first of all, people are just dying to see some old friends. The Frank Stella that used to hang on the stairs, the big Frank Stella is back. The Mel Chin, which everybody calls the barrel, but in honor of Mel, who's not here right now, we'll call it Spirit, which is its actual name, but we all know it's the barrel. It's got its new home. The Alison Saar Nocturne Navigator, known fondly as the Blue Lady, is actually going to be in a new spot, and you'll actually be able to see the light. It's actually lit from inside, and it's never been exhibited in a place where you can actually see the way the artist intended it to be seen. So great things that are old friends. Oh, the Debbie Butterfield Joseph horse is back, the beautiful horses, he's back. And then there are lots of new things. I think people just had no idea. The Louise Nevelson you haven't seen in a really long time, and it's up. So great new things. And then some wonderful things on loan. We have a new relationship with the Israeli Antiquity Authority, and they have put on loan for at least 3 years a wonderful display of ancient glass. And we have nothing like that in the collection. So Roman glass, which is really an interesting display of that. And then the Liechtenstein Foundation has put a big, beautiful painting called The Oval Office, from White House, The Oval Office. It's the largest picture I've ever seen of Roy's. And it's on loan to the museum. So lots of nice surprises.
Patty Jurgensen Garden
Yes.
will have a music sculpture.
Yes.
I listened to it the other day. Tell people about that. That's fascinating.
So we have a new sculpture garden that's now on the north side of the building. Let's get my directions. The north side of the building, and it will be named in honor of Patty Jurgensen, who, along with Ann Hoagland, and the Hoaglands and the Jurgensens were the head of the campaign. And of course, I know many of you in this room know we lost Patty this year. And so we thought that nothing better than to name the sculpture garden for her. And the new piece that's in there, lots of old friend sculptures you'll see. But on the west side of the garden, there's this birch walk. And we have acquired our first sound sculpture by Suzanne Phillips. Suzanne, yes, I did that right. My brain went.
With a Z at the end.
Yeah, with the Phillips with a Z. It's called Study in Strings. It's an incredible piece. And you literally, it has, I think, 12 or 15 speakers, and you experience it as you walk through the space. And it's just an extraordinary piece. So I think we're real excited about that.
You were going to jump in.
Well, I was going to add a fourth favorite thing, and
Okay.
that is the garden.
allowed to have a fourth
That is the garden. I think it's going to be quite special. It has all the feel of the old garden, but just it's a different scale, and
It's much bigger.
And the connection that it's going to have to the event space and then the cafe is really going to enhance the experience of people that are visiting, and they're going to spend more time there for that reason.
Yeah, the new restaurant cafe is actually on the, people have longed for this for years. Can you remember, okay, those who used to eat with us, remember where you had to take your tray and walk carefully across the lobby, through the doors to try to get to the garden so you could eat in the garden? Now the cafe restaurant, which is called Shaco, which we are doing with Cameron Mitchell, is right on the garden. And in fact, there are these nano doors that accordion doors that completely push back. And so in good weather, the seal of the building is at the back of the cafe, so you'll be able to come and go out of the cafe and sit right on the garden, which I think is great. And that part of the garden is the little homage to the Russell Page garden, so it will look the most like the Russell Page garden.
Now, Shaco is the painting.
Shaco is the painting. So we own a beautiful Alexei Yelinsky. Yelinsky was a big friend of Matisse's, and this is the great woman, the figure of the woman with the green face and the big red hat. That's Shaco.
They call her Shaco, and that's because she loved chocolate?
That's right. It was her nickname as a model. And actually, this is interesting. Her real name has never been uncovered. No one knows what her real name was anymore. That's been lost to time. But all the artists called her Shaco because they knew that if they would give her just a little bit of hot chocolate, she would model 10 minutes longer or 20 minutes longer. So artists are always trying to stretch that fee they were paying the model. And so one of the great things we're doing with the Cameron Mitchell team is we're having special chocolate treats for the cafe.
The opening exhibition. Now, I must say, Paul Feely is not a name that jumps to my mind.
Not a household name.
No.
Not a household.
Talk about it.
So one of the things the museum is known for nationally and internationally is involving itself in projects where there are artists that they deserve another look. They deserve to be reintroduced to introduced to a new generation, particularly American artists. Paul Feely taught at Bennington. He was the teacher of Helen Frankenthaler. Helen Frankenthaler, a bit more of a household name. And this exhibition that we did with the Albright Knox is a complete retrospective. So you sort of get to meet him again, and it's even more important to us because at the very tip of our property, down there at the corner of Washington and Gay, will be the largest sculpture. He mostly was a painter, but he was also an object maker. And this was the last major piece that he did before his death in the late 60s. And the piece was destroyed. It was exhibited in his memorial show at the Guggenheim in New York, and then it was in the big atrium of the Guggenheim, and it was destroyed. And the family, the Feely family, the estate, the family, the dealer, they've always longed to remake the piece exactly as Paul had. In fact, the original piece was made after his death because it was being finished before he died. And so they've had that working with us and us working with them, we've had it made. So we will have, it's going to be called Karnak, and it's 9 21-foot tall sort of columns. It's going to be a great piece. So we're into Paul Feely now. We all
Obviously,
Paul
we all
Feely
will
will
be.
now be a household name in Columbus, Ohio. The other exhibition, which you just mentioned quickly, is Keeping Pace. Many of you in this room may remember Eva Glimscher. And when I was a young curator, I was always told there was the Art World of Columbus, Ohio before Eva Glimscher and the Art World of Columbus after Eva Glimscher. And I always wanted to do this show that looked at the impact of Pace Columbus on all of us. I mean, Ron Pizzuti bought one of his very first works of art for his collection from her. And so we're doing an exhibition about that transformational moment, linking that transformational moment with our transformational moment.
What impact is the new space, the new museum, the new concept, and what some people call the green box going to have
Michael's green box.
on the city of Columbus? What impact are the people going to feel?
I don't know. What do you think? You want to start?
It's your building.
It's my building. Well, I I think, okay, here's the, I've now given, behind the scenes with a few people, and and everybody says exactly the same thing to me. They always, about 2/3 of the way through the tour, they say, I don't feel like I'm in Columbus, Ohio anymore. I feel like I'm in a really big city. And I thought, well, we are a big city. We're like the 15th biggest city. But I think it makes you look at the museum in an entirely different way. And I think it will attract a new generation of people. I mean, I think the cultural sector in Columbus is so vibrant. I mean, I think it's just extraordinary. We have the Wexner Center, we have the Bizzuti Collection, the COSI. I mean, we think of ourselves all together, not just as arts, but arts and culture. And I think this will be one of the great, places where people will, I want to see a generation of children grow up at the museum. And I want to see what kind of citizens they become, what kind of people they become. And I think the role of the arts in not just enriching people's lives, but transforming the lives and the connections that we have with each other in our community. I think this allows us to do that in a much bigger way.
You talked about learning space, increased learning space, and increased social space.
Yes.
You will be able to have 600 people at an event. Talk about what has changed and the beauty that now will be seen from the big space if you put tables and chairs. I know it's hard to describe, so I can't do it without using my
hands. So there's this, so you all know, I hope most of you know Derby Court, which is the center of the 1931 building, which was actually originally an open to the sky court. It was an outdoor court from 1931 to 1953. It was enclosed, and then during the renovation of Phase 2, we raised the floor of Derby Court. We then restored the balustrade and put a beautiful glass canopy. So that's always been the social heart of the building. And so now the new pavilion, the new Schottenstein Pavilion, comes, it's on axis. So you can stand at the back of the pavilion. Okay, so I'm now standing at the back of the pavilion with the new garden at my back. I can look all the way to Broad Street. So there's this axis that comes right through the center of the building that you can have a small event, a big event. And events are, they make good money. I mean, they do. I mean,
you're booked pretty well.
Yes, we're doing like 35 or 38 rental events in the first 30 days or something crazy like that. But and it's good for the bottom line, unquestionably. But the other thing it's good for is introducing people to the museum. People come the museums are very social places. When you come to a museum, the kind of experience you want will be based on who you come with. If you come with a friend, you'll have one kind of experience in our galleries. If you come with your children or your grandchildren, a different. If you come with a work colleague, if you're on a date, totally different. So I think that extends that into events in that you come with you come to a wedding or you come to a getaway from the office, like a brainstorming session at the museum. You see the museum in a different way, and many people, that's the first experience they'll have with a museum will be a social experience, and then they'll want to come back to see the galleries, to see the collection, to see the shows.
The first experience that the people driving down or walking down Broad Street are noticing is this green box. Pre-patinated, patinated. Yes. Talk about it.
So there are a lot of great stories. There are a lot of great stories surrounding that green box. Not the least of which is when there was and Cornica Cosing's here, they can appreciate that. They're the contractor that built the building. They did a fantastic job.
We actually should stop and say one thing before we do this.
Yeah.
Mike and I had a very unusual experience, and I've now talked to enough museum directors that I know how really unusual it is. Most people design a building, and then the rest of the experience is cutting it back to the budget, and it's just this cutting experience. Mike and I had the joy of actually designing a building that we had the budget to build because Mark Corna sat in all of those early design meetings. I suspect he does not do this all the time. He could not do this. By keeping us on track of what he knew we could do, we designed the building. We built the building we designed. And then he gave us this most fantastic young project coordinator. The other Mike of this project is Mike Schmidt, so put your hand up. So we call them the Mikes. Now talk about coffee.
So the museum's collection has to be housed in something that is, can last 100+ years. And so you have to put water, museums, the environment inside is very humid. And so you need like a lot of waterproofing on it. And so at one point, waterproofing was going on the exterior of the building. And guess what color that waterproofing was? It was green. So for the longest time, Nannette was getting phone calls, we hate that green. It was like a Florida kind of, lime green kind of color. And so
Actually,
people thought it was the copper.
Right, they did.
Yeah.
And actually, in typical Columbus fashion, nobody told me for weeks. You were all talking about it at cocktail parties or the coffee shop. And then finally, somebody said something. I said, what? And they said, well, we think it's a little Miami Beach. We think it's a little. And I said, what are you talking about? I had no idea people were. And then like, oh my God, no, that's. I think you and I were not the best loved people those weeks.
No, we were not.
I think we were not.
So the
loved.
process.
Well, but yeah, getting to like that green copper material was a process, and actually it involves. And here's the thing, like I'm an architect, and my team here from DesignGroup. We spend time, and our landscape consultants, MKSK, we spend all our time thinking about what things look like and how they're going to look. But as aesthetic as the museum is, and as visual as they are, it does still require a lot of hand-holding and explanation and comfort level. You got to build this trust level so that you can do something a little different. Without the trust, you're not doing anything different. So we took field trips to a lot of different places to look at materials on buildings, to look at what certain buildings were doing, how you put an old building next to a new building. But one of the trips was in the dead of winter. We drove up to, of all places, Worcester, Ohio, which is a lovely town. They had a great dormitory building that was built there by some architects that I'd really like. And that was where I was going to show people who were not convinced, which was everyone, about going with pre-patinated copper on the building. And we drove up, and I held back. Keone Fleming, who's with my office, is not here today, was with me. Rod was there. Ann Hoagland was there. And so I held back, and I watched everyone walk up to this building and look at it. And then Anne, it was so great because Anne puts her hands on the building and she touches this copper and she turns around and she says, this is the only material I want. This is perfect. And so that's how it ended up being like a material that no one wanted, but seeing it in real life and being able to touch it, like seeing and experiencing it, that's the thing that connects you to materials and helps you make decisions about moving things forward. And I'm hoping that this building in some ways, by being a little bit more provocative, is good for Columbus because we are conservative sometimes about how we approach things. And it's good. I think you had asked earlier about what it represents for Columbus. I feel like Columbus is at a point right now where we're at a Renaissance period in a way, and this is kind of a reflection of a moment in time. There are a lot of new buildings being built, and a lot of them are really interesting. And I'm hoping that this museum does some part to elevate the dialogue about what good and different design is and how to approach things not in the kind of same old fashion.
We're going to take audience questions. I'm going to ask one more question, and then you all can please ask your questions. Move to the microphone. You'll say your name, and please, not a lot of editorial comment, just questions, please. One more thing. The museum has had a lot of things in storage that you didn't have room for. Now you will be able, and so what will we be able to see that's been sort of hidden for years?
I was going to say, I think the big surprise is that we have a really wonderful contemporary collection. The wing on the so the ground floor of the wing is primarily designed to have special exhibitions, temporary exhibitions. So that's where the Glimcher show will be, and that's where the Keeping Pace show will be. That's where the Paul Feely will be. Paul Feely will also be upstairs. But the second floor is designed, which you cross over those bridges, you walk through the galleries in the historic building, and you walk across the bridges to the second floor, which has the galleries for the collection. A lot of that right now is going to be contemporary because we have a fantastic collection that people haven't seen, and these spaces are beautifully designed to be able to see that collection in a new way. The other thing I promised when I first, early in my directorship, I've now been director 12 years. Oh my Lord. People kept saying to me, what else have you got? I didn't quite understand that question. I would show them what else you got? I was like, what else do I got? I don't. But what they really meant was, what other than, you have great American and European modernism, what other kinds of works of art do you have? So we have this great pre-Columbian collection. We have some wonderful Asian ceramics. We have We have wonderful contemporary glass. There was a craving for people to see different things within the collection. So one of the galleries, Gallery 1, I get 1 and 10 confused to this day, I think it's Gallery 1, will be a changing gallery of parts of the collection that you don't see as often, and we want to make sure that. We have a great textile collection that people don't know about. We're just giving these great coverlets. We have a coverlet collection. We're just giving this great quilt collection by the Wasserstrom. So we have a great collection. So, new things, surprises,
And we're ready for questions. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Carol McGuire, and I'm absolutely so excited to be able to get in and see this fabulous new addition to the museum. This is kind of a follow-on question, Nannette. I mean, art museums have wonderful attics, and you've already talked about some of the things. How did you make the decision for what you pulled out of the attic to put in this new building? And what's next? I mean, are you running a hierarchy on things that have been in storage for so long that you want to reintroduce them to the public? And how's that being done?
Great. That actually is the job of the curators. I used to be a curator, and I sometimes get accused of still being a curator, so I try not to do that. A lot of the new wing, really the whole, Tyler really won the lottery. Tyler Can, our contemporary curator, could not be here. He's actually back at the museum putting up art. He picked the pieces for the new wing. He spent a lot of time thinking about which pieces he wanted to get up. There's some things that are on loan that are going to come back into the space. And he worked very closely with our new curator of photography, our new Soder curator of photography, Drew Sawyer, who's right here. And Drew, they work together because there's a lot of contemporary photography in our collection. And then we also did a gallery of a photography gallery in the historic building to kind of introduce Drew's taste. So one of the great things about curatorial work that you don't, I think it's kind of, I think I used to go to art museums all the time and I just would look at that picture and then that picture, and it was a while before I stepped back and thought about the conversation of works of art have with each other. And what's great about new curators is that curators look at things differently. They want to, when you're even collecting, they can take the same idea and like, well, this object is more interesting than this one, and for them, and the way they want to tell stories within the collection. I was just thinking the other person I wanted to point out was David Stark, who's our new chief curator. And David's background is actually European 19th century art, and he and I were hanging the American gallery. And he said, well, let's put the Georgia O'Keeffe next to the Severin Rosen. And the old Americanist in me said, oh, no, you never do that. Because, I mean, I know they're both still lifes, and then I thought, wait a minute, he's right. This is a really interesting conversation. So I think the great thing about curators is they help you see things in new ways and connections and stories that you might not know that you even were thinking about.
Hi, David Chesbrough at COSI. And Nannette, I want to applaud not only you and your board, but this really is a community project. I think it's fantastic that Mark Corona, Josh, I see here. This really was a local project, and I think people like Peggy, you and Bob, and the local folks who came forth to make this happen, because a first-class city really should have first-class cultural assets, thriving and sustainable first-class cultural assets. And I actually ran an art museum as well as a science center at one point in my life, so I'm going to actually go to my science geek side, but with that point of view. So Michael, materials. In the old days, you always built a black box. You didn't want any light at all in a gallery. What about materials nowadays has allowed you to create something that's open and bright, yet at the same time protect the valuable assets of the collections?
Yes, great question. Glass has come a very long way from being something that let light through unencumbered to something that has very sophisticated films and gases inside the glass itself. So there are actually like multiple layers of protection. But beyond the technology part, there's a simple understanding of like understanding where the sun comes from during the day. And so you'll notice that the projection on the south side of the street toward Broad Street is very deep in comparison to the north side. That's actually acting as a sunshade on that side of the building. That is cutting most of the direct light from coming in. And you'll get bounce into reflective light, but it's cutting a lot of the direct light, both on the upper level and the lower level. When you get to the level of the glass, there are low emissivity coatings as well as sun, what's the word I'm looking for here? Sun protection on the glass. I don't know why I'm missing the word, but UV, thank you. Gosh, thanks for the audience help. There's UV protection on the glass. Inside of the glass are a series of roller shades. In some cases, there are entire blackout roller shades, but in most cases, there are what's called image-preserving media. Basically, it is a roll shade that is translucent. It cuts the light coming in. You can probably see that as you drive by if it looks very black right now on the first floor. When you're standing inside, that dark shade actually allows you to see out unencumbered, so you can still see outside of the building. So there are a number of layers of protection. Some are passive in terms of design of the building. Some are technological in terms of the films on the glass, and others are mechanical in terms of the shades.
I was going to say, you know, I'm so used to Mike's language, and I always talk about the cinematic facade. I remember the first time I was up there with the other Mike, and he said something about the snout of the building, and I said, the what? And he goes, oh, we call it the snout. And I thought, you know, it is like a snout of the building. So it was very funny to, you know, the language, but it's kind of cinematic, and the snout. The snout with the cinematic.
At the same time. Stick your nose out.
Hi, I'm Ken Thompson. I'm an architect, and I do houses. And I was lucky enough to take the AIA's local chapter's pre-tour that you led, Mike, back in June or whenever that was. And I can't say how stunning it is. You really knocked the ball out of the ballpark. And that comes back to you, Nannette, is how often these museum buildings or this sort of thing, museum boards go to star architects, national or international type architects. How was that decision made to keep that architect local and only local?
Well, actually, we, in the very origins of the project, we did look at national architects. And the very early sort of massing of the building was done by Todd Williams and Billy Chen out of New York. And they did a wonderful job at that early stage. But interestingly, DesignGroup, and Mike in particular, was the architect. You know, you always have a local partner in any case. And he was actually there from the very beginning. He was the one they chose. And at some points, we decided to transition to a local team. And I have to tell you, I don't think anyone in the world could have built a better building than Mike and the DesignGroup team. I think that their passion and they're caring about this building. I mean, and the fact that Mike would come back again and again, and he would think about something for a long time, and then come back and said, you know, we could tweak this. The kind of passion for something that was going to live in his community where his kids were growing up really, I think, made a difference. I felt the same thing about the Corna team, that sort of passion. And I think that really made a difference for us. And our board embraced that.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, this is a testament to like risk-taking too. Like, you know, I actually developed a relationship for a while with Nannette, and I've known you since like 2005, I guess.
Yeah, together for a long time.
So things happen.
You have more gray hair than you.
Yeah.
You have any gray hair. How did you get through this without gray hair?
I don't know, Cameron.
And you.
Well, we all know that I got gray hair, but Michael probably does not.
So
Okay. I'm sorry, I always thought you had a few. Okay, a little bit right.
I have some.
Okay. I have
Would you like me to judge it for you?
I have to cause you a few gray hairs. I think.
I put on a little weight. Nannette took a risk. I mean, the board took, in a sense, a risk with us. And actually, that was an amazing thing, is the appreciation that actually I have and the sense of like owning up to that. But we had been working, DesignGroup is a local firm that's been working on a lot of different types of projects over the years. And, you know, we've been quietly, I think, doing good work. And I think, you know, talking to Nannette, again, it's about building trust. I think the trust was built, an understanding of how we understood their mission, and they just made that leap. And we hopefully have made you happy in the process. But well, it required a huge leap of faith on their part. But I think since it's proven out and helped them with us, I'm hoping that other clients in Columbus will look at their local design community and do the same thing and consider hiring more really local talent, which there's a significant amount of here in Columbus.
Yeah, there is a lot of talent here.
Hi, Java Kittrick. Could you talk to us about membership and the cost of the museum, and if there's a corporation that might sponsor free Sundays, or how school kids or other people could get access to the museum, please?
I am really glad you asked that, because I realized that when I spoke about that $93 billion and all the people that helped, I said there was a lot of private, individuals and families and ours, our corporate. The other big piece was the business community, our local business community. They all stepped up. Everybody stepped up to help. And in fact, so let's kind of go over. So there is the Black Tie Art Celebration event on October 22nd, sold out. We truly sold it out, so it was really exciting. It's complete, so I'm not lying. It's really sold out, so don't call me. It's sold out. I have a waiting list. It's that, I have people who have donors at the museum, but I'm shoehorning them in.
Don't call me.
Yeah. So I can't. But then on the Saturday, the 24th, is the big members opening, and anybody and everybody who is part of our museum family is included. It's like a day-long party. I think it starts at noon. And then about 5 o'clock, it switches to an evening dance party. And for those of us of a certain age in the room will remember Studio 54, since the two big exhibitions really have to deal with the 70s, the late 60s and the 70s, we are going to do a dance party, Studio 54 dance party. So if you are a member, and if you're not a member, it is not too late to join the museum, starting at $60, $65, it's $60. The director should know this, 60. But any amount will be taken, starting there. And then on Sunday is our first day to the public. It is Sunday, it is free Sunday, and the grand opening is sponsored by PNC, the grand public opening. So on Sunday, the 25th of October. So please think about joining us. Sometimes I have people say to me, oh, I'm only like a regular member. I'm only like a $60 member. I always hate when people say that to me, because you know what? Joining matters, belonging matters, stepping up and saying, I belong to the museum, and it matters to me that I have a good museum, or a good science museum, or a good Wexner, whatever you want to, or a good Franklin Park. Belonging matters, you all. Belonging at any level of a museum, it's that connection to you and your connection of what you want for your community. So I love every one of our museum members.
Hi, Andy Campbell.
Ask a question.
I could ask a question, probably the last question.
asked.
I had a film professor at Ohio State, Mojmir Devoda, and we spent an entire semester talking about space in relation to how it affects your communication, or how you receive the communication or the message from the art or for the film. So you've talked, and David asked a little bit about this, about the light. I'm really curious about if you gave some thought to the acoustics of the space and things like temperature and airflow in the room, and how that might affect your experience in the museum.
Yeah, so anyone, and Sherry can appreciate this, that runs, and David, when you have a space where there are precious objects, the sort of spectrum of variation in the humidity and temperature level is very narrow. And working with our engineers, we knew what that was, and the systems are designed to accommodate that near perfection, right? So in terms of acoustics, so there are a variety of types of spaces. There are the gallery spaces, there's the main sort of entry space, and then there's the event hall. The main space is very faceted space. Like there are a lot of different kinds of planes and different materials and lots of ins and outs. And so the acoustics in there will be a little more live because it is more of a public space. And so you want a little bit of acoustic brightness. But given how many kind of legs of space come off of that, a lot of that sort of sound in the reflection gets kind of like dissipated. In the event space itself, the special event space, there is an acoustic drywall ceiling that accommodates and deals with the acoustics associated with large events happening in those spaces. And the galleries themselves, there wasn't any special acoustic treatment because we wanted to maintain as much flexibility in terms of violating the ceiling as possible. And I use that word with Greg Jones in mind because I know he's going to put lots of stuff in the ceiling. And so but the proportions of the space are very regular, and so that helps with the acoustics a bit. But it is again, the brightest space is the center space. The galleries themselves are quieter given how they're kind of divided up. The walls are very thick in that space. There's drywall over plywood, over concrete block. And so the thickness of all those materials, and especially people ask like, well, you've got that glass at the front of the building, like, can't you hear cars go by? No. It's all those considerations. We actually had an acoustical designer on the project, David Kahn from New York, who did a phenomenal job advising us on how to deal with the acoustics.
And one of the things about this space that you can't really appreciate now, that is sort of a secret that we all know, is that those of you who toured the building while it was under construction know this. The wing is just two giant tubes of space, a tube on the ground floor and a tube on the second floor. And there are no load-bearing interior walls. None. Zero. Now, when you come all to see it later this month, you'll see that it has walls with art hanging on it. But all of those walls are simply for the art. They're not load-bearing, which means going forward, again, thinking about building for future generations, people can move those walls around in any configuration they want because they're simply to hang art on. They are not load-bearing walls. It's just people are surprised when they hear that because it's not as evident now. So.
Wow, I'm even more excited to see this new space than I was before we started today. We encourage you to continue the conversation in the lobby with coffee, and everyone knows I love the cookies. Remember that you can view and share all of our forums on CTV Columbus Television, on WOSU and PBS affiliates statewide through the Ohio channel, and anytime on CMC's website via YouTube. Let's thank our sponsors, The Ohio State University and Puffin Foundation West, and our speakers, Nannette Macijunes, Michael Bongiorno, and Carol Luper. And thanks to all of you for being here. We hope to see you again soon.